first episode of 3NN, 3 Non-Nerds. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nick Tesla, joined by
Brian McFadden.
And we're going to have a great time. We're missing our third non-nerd. His name is Rich Colazzo. He'll be here next week, so don't forget to tune in so you can meet his crazy ass as well. Pardon my language. So I guess we're going to get started on the show. I'm going to try and keep the down to a minimum. But Brian, if you can...
You just did one.
I know. I'm like a hockey player. If you ever watch a hockey player do an interview, a hockey player, probably about 90% of the time you hear him say, well, you know, I made that goal tonight, but I put my best foot forward. You know, my skate came a little bit loose, but once I took that slap shot, you know, so I don't know what the hell I'm even really talking about right now. But we're gonna basically get into. We're gonna have Brian give us maybe a 5-10 minute spiel about who he is and what his background is and what's led him to become the person he is today. I'll give you about a 5-10 minute spiel about who I am, what's led me to become the person that I am today, and when Rich is here next week, we'll also have him give his 5-10 minute spiel. So, I was going to say maybe we can edit it into the show, like have him do it and then edit it into the show, but I don't think it would make it out by 8 o'clock this night. Or this night, yes. This fortnight. So
Newspeak. Let's go with Newspeak. Double plus good.
What is Newspeak?
You need to read 1984, my friend.
No, you have to really. That's one thing that you guys will quickly realize about me. You may look around my apartment and see close to 1,000 books. Maybe not yet, but once I get all my books here, you'll see probably close to 1,000 books that I have. And I've read maybe 5 of those books.
Oh.
So, you know, like I may talk about Brave New World and certain other things, but it's really because I've seen the made-for-TV movie or the movies about it, and I haven't actually read the book.
Honestly couldn't bring myself to watch the Brave New World made-for-TV movie. I've tried and tried and tried, and I'll stick with the black and white 1984 that was recorded in 56.
Okay, all right. I don't know, also... This might be edited out, I don't know. But keep your voice up because we don't have our microphone with us yet. I'm hoping by next week's show, we can have the microphone up and a secondary camera as well set up. But as of right now, we're bare bones. We're getting started. So we have kind of a one camera setup, and the camera is probably about 10-15 feet away from us, maybe 10 feet away from us. So make sure you keep your voice up, and if you can, Brian, tell us about yourself a little bit. They give us an idea. What's your age range? Would you say you're in the 21 to 29 age range? Would you say you're maybe in the 30 to 39 age range?
Low
or maybe
30s.
Low 30s. Okay, all right. So we'll stick with the low 30s. Tell us about your childhood, Brian. What kind of childhood did you have? Was it a traumatic childhood? Was it a spoiled childhood? Was it a
my
normal
grandmother
childhood?
spoiled the crap out of me, but I didn't say I was spoiled.
Your grandmother spoiled the crap out of you.
Oh, yeah, she was a grandmother. She did what grandmothers do.
Okay, but okay.
You know, my parents were the old school. We're going to sit around and have a family dinner. You're not taking your dinner and going playing video games or any of that crap.
Okay.
We're going to sit down at the table. My dad would sit there and talk about, oh yeah, this new law that they're passing, blah blah blah, or this speech Bush gave the other night and all this stuff. And I didn't really know anything about what he was talking about. I just knew that he didn't like what the government was doing.
Okay, so you had a dad who was very interested in politics.
So I had it in the back of my mind that was, okay, well, the government's not my friend. They're trying to screw us. Because I was 17 working in the ShopRite Bakery. Oh, what a memorable morning that was, a Tuesday morning in September. When the deli manager comes running through the room. An airplane just hit the Twin Towers. When this guy was kind of a joker, smart-ass type. You know, we kind of, whatever, dude. Okay, not funny, but whatever. Then he comes back a little while later. Another plane just hit the other tower. He didn't look like he was joking that. And when we finally heard about the Pentagon, it's, of course, that morning is when I woke up and realized there was much more going on than even my father ever knew. And I went home and saw a video of the side of the Pentagon when the 757 jetliner that's 267-foot wingspan and 300 feet long, left a perfect 6-foot diameter hole in the side of the wall with no wreck.
Now, did you notice that day on the news footage, or did you come
Yeah,
across
that day when I got
through
home from
documentaries?
work.
Okay.
And over the course of the day, you saw the hole get bigger and bigger. And then they stopped showing the 6-foot hole, and it was just the collapsed wall. That's where the plane hit. Never once was there any debris or anything, of course, and the only picture released kind of resembled a missile, a fighter jet, something, not a jetliner. And that's what made me start asking questions and reading things and learning things. The more I discovered, the more I searched for more, because more questions. Every answer led to 5 more questions.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm still trying to answer some of those questions.
Okay. So it just kind of gradually grew. Your enthusiasm for wanting to know the truth, I guess.
Yes, I kind of
It
realized.
gradually grew, but it all.
I realized for
started
the
when you were a
first
child.
time that we weren't being told the truth, and I'm a pretty curious person. I like to know things. They could be important things, they could be useless things. I just like to know things. I want to know what happened that morning, and who was involved, and why, and what the actual goal was.
Cool.
And I have my theories. Everyone has their theories,
Okay.
but I need more information on that.
That's good.
And I'm hoping one day, maybe somebody will declassify something that gives us some of those answers.
Which I hope as well. I hope one day that does happen as well. Kind of like how Pearl Harbor documents were released. Vietnam, Northwoods, Operation Northwoods, Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin incident. We eventually get the truth. It just takes about 50 years to come out.
Usually,
Around
I'm
50 or
hoping
60 years or so.
God willing, I'll be alive when it
9/11,
happens.
2001, so about 1961. About 2061, we might have the truth, or the truth might start actually circulating. Right now, we just have a lot of conjecture. That's the worst part about it is,
Yes.
with not much actual truth that was ever released, it's only up to us to try and figure out and decide what actually happened.
Well, the worst
but
part
until they
is-
admit something, we don't know which path is actually the right path to go down.
The worst
as far
part
as
is you
what
can't
happened that
even
day.
really question it
No,
without
it's
them
not.
coming down on you and demonizing you. No, this is the story. Stop asking questions.
Yes. And that's the problem with it is, it takes at least 20 years to get to that point where you're allowed to start questioning it. Because it's so long ago that it's not fresh on anybody's minds.
It's been over 50 years now
nobody's
since
still affected.
JFK.
The
and
people
they
that
still
lost their
don't.
children in that tragedy, the people that lost their children are starting to pass away, are starting to get too old to even care, or to really
No, they'll never
fight
stop
back.
caring.
Not too old to care, but too old to argue back with somebody about it. It's something that they'd rather just let go for their own solace and their own peace, thinking that that's letting whoever passed away in the Twin Towers that they knew that day, that's letting them rest in peace instead of arguing with people about it and what really happened in the government story. Because what you also see is, as time goes by, it may not become more accepted that what happened that day was something fucked up, or what happened that day, pardon my language, something messed up, right? What happened that day, it becomes not more accepted, but more evident. So as these people get older and older, when it first happened, the emotion of it
The
only
shock.
let them believe the story that they were told about what happened, that it was 21 hijackers and or was it 19
Couple box
hijackers.
cutters.
Exactly, box cutters. The government had nothing to do with it, had no full knowledge of it whatsoever, and all of that, the emotion lets them believe that, fully believe that, and argue with anybody who believes anything else.
No,
But-
even after I started looking into it, I still, in the back of my mind, it could be true. This could be. It was when I heard that Vice President, was it Cheney at the time, I believe, under Bush?
Yep.
That it was Vice President Cheney that directly ordered NORAD to stand down and not intercept those planes.
Yes.
Was when something in my mind clicked and said, no,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
this
there's,
is-
exactly.
this
There's
is
too
total
much.
inside
And as you
job.
learn
Like,
that stuff, that's what I'm saying.
that was.
These people that were so hardcore about the mainstream media's view that they gave us, or point of view that they gave us, which was basically a government point of view, what the government said you're going to say, right? These people,
Or
as 20 years down the line, they've started to hear little things like this, and it's not like they just heard it from somebody trying to argue with them. They heard it from a documentary on TV that is not trying to sway them one way or another, just brings up this odd fact. And that's when you realize, well, maybe there was some weird stuff that went on that day. And no matter how attached you were to the original story, you realize that there is
You've been lied to.
Exactly, you've been lied to. There's a whole nother story. So you may still be attached to that story and still want to believe that story, but you don't want to argue with people about that story because you're starting to realize those people actually
There's
are
holes
probably
in that
closer
story.
to the truth. Those people are closer to the truth and really want to know the truth. And I'm more comfortable living the lie or knowing the lie and believing the lie. And I feel more comfortable with that. Even though I know it's a lie or I'm starting to know more and more it's a lie, I feel more comfortable going on that I don't have to face the hard truth. Let that be on them. So therefore I'm not going to argue with those people because I actually have a little bit of respect for them for actually trying to look for the truth. Whereas 20 years ago, you know, when it first happened, nobody wants to say, oh, I got a little respect for you for trying to find the truth. They say, have a heart, man. You know how many people died that day? You know what I'm saying? Or have
Actually,
a
it was
heart, man.
13 years ago, by the way.
Whatever, 10 years ago, I like to round things around, so, but you know exactly what I'm saying is as time goes on, it becomes like it was the JFK assassination thing.
Which still is...
Well, you can now talk about it, that's what I'm saying.
That's all, though. You still aren't getting anything really...
Well, you're not going to get
very
anything
little.
close to the truth, but you also got to realize
And most of the people...
the monumentous...
The problem now, though, is the people who do know the truth are at that age where they're going to pass away, and if they haven't told anyone or written any of that down,
Oh,
you
it's
can
out
never
there.
find it.
No, I definitely think it's out there, but I think the problem with that is when the American public finds out that any faction of the American government had anything to do with assassinating the United States president, doesn't matter if it was 100 years ago, the American public are going to stomp their feet and be very, very, very upset about that because the first thing they're going to think of is, what would happen if my president today was assassinated and they told me some lie, they gave me some cover-up story, but it was really my government. That would be unacceptable, and even if I knew that and it took 50 years for it to become truth, it would still be unacceptable. Whereas a major tragedy that led to a war can be something that can be forgotten, or something that can be, people's thoughts about it can kind of be steered to not be so, I don't want to say dramatic about it, but not have their emotions tied to it. Whereas when you're only 10 years away from it happening, or 10 years, it was only 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it's still, your emotions are still somewhat tied to it. You can still remember pretty clearly what you were doing that day. Whereas 20, 30 years down the line,
people
don't
remember
that
clearly.
as
Everyone
clearly.
who was alive during the JFK, hate to use
Yeah.
the A word, but
What?
that terrible event that took place and ended his life. Everyone who was alive that morning remembers where they were, what they were doing the moment that happened. But at the 50th anniversary, the time of that, a poll came out, and I think it was something like 94% of the people polled do not believe the official JFK assassination story.
Yep.
So I think it's more a case of
But that grew.
they're realizing it,
that
they're
grew.
accepting it, they're just not
Well, that's also That's also, I think, you're going to come to find that with 9/11. Is there so much
Unfortunately.
overwhelming evidence that there was some sort of tomfoolery that went on that day that involved our government? There's so much evidence, overwhelming evidence to that as time goes on, and as more and more people are exposed to that information by default, it's not even like they're looking for that information, it's by default going to come across their eyes and come across their brain. As more and more people see that information, it will become more and more clear that something wrong, we did something wrong that day. Not us, the United States public, but us, the United States government, did something wrong that day. And there was foul play by us involved. You know, or maybe it was just blowback and they refused to admit that they could have caused that, or that they could have caused it and they knew it was going to happen, but they let it happen for an insurance scheme with Larry Silverstein or something. Like, really, it could be that stupid that's all it really is that they really had no actual influence over it happening. They just had influence over stopping it, and they never did because Larry Silverstein found out. They went to Larry Silverstein and found out, or Larry Silverstein let them know, hey, listen, I can lose these two buildings. Half these two buildings are only half occupied. I'm having trouble filling them up. You know what I'm saying? I'm having to lower the rent. I'd like these two buildings to somehow just disappear, and I can build one new big, twice as large building, or twice as tall building, or twice as nice building, where everybody wants to be in that building. But Larry Silverstein, you get what you get what you give, right? Larry Silverstein now has to deal with the constant state of security that is completely surrounding the World Trade Center. True. Where nobody wants to even go near the World Trade Center. Who wants to work where you got to be patted down and searched every day and walk through body scanners and shit like that just to go to your job every day?
Do you ever work in the Pentagon? It's
Well,
the same deal.
that's the Pentagon, but not every business person wants to go through that,
This
do
is
they?
true.
Not every person who's trying to rent out office space in there, they're gonna think twice about renting office space in there because of the overwhelming security measures. Now, if you have a company where your security is of utmost importance, and you have documents in there that are of utmost importance, maybe that's okay. But if you're just a regular company, not a regular company, but you're a multi-million-dollar company that doesn't really deal with things that are very, very highly secure, you know what I'm saying? You make mulch for a living, but you're the biggest mulch producer in the world. You may not need a place in there. You're going to be turned away from that because you don't want all your employees who just are there to buy and sell mulch. You don't want them to have to go through security scans every day to get in and out of the building. You're not the type of person that needs to worry about that. But little companies like that are not going to want to go to the World Trade Center. Hence where Larry Silverstein kind of did himself in and didn't even realize it. Didn't realize that once everything was rebuilt, that they were going to demand a constant security zone around the World Trade Center.
And I can kind
That's
of
not
agree with
gonna
that
work.
because it is now admitted, and there's the evidence was out there already.
Mm-hmm.
That Building 7 that was never struck. There's audio of them saying "pull it," which is technical term for controlled demolition. We're going to bring the building down. They have him in interviews saying, "Oh yeah, the order was given to pull the building. We pulled it."
Well, what I've heard
So that
is
could be something along those
what
lines.
I've heard is the plane that went down in Shanksville was either, we gotta get off this topic in a second, but
Yeah.
the plane that got
It's
shut
supposed to hit
down.
the Pentagon, right?
No. The plane that got shut down in Shanksville was either for the Capitol building or Building 7.
Really?
Hence why Building 7 was already rigged to go down because
Makes
it was
sense.
supposed to get hit. And
Yeah,
the
that's- I
plane,
never
the actual
considered that.
story that we were told where American citizens fought off the guys, where it may have actually happened. It may have actually just, they were like, these guys just got box cutters. Let's fight them. Come on, let's do this. Let's fight these guys, you know what I'm saying? And they actually stopped it from either hitting the Capitol building, which I don't know if they would destroy the Capitol building. If you know about like esoteric architecture and Freemasonic
Oh, I know a little bit about
architecture
that, of
and
course.
the way DC was all laid out and
Yep.
the way a lot of those buildings resemble ancient Rome, I don't think the Capitol would have been destroyed. I think Building 7 was much more likely. If the Capitol was going to be destroyed, you would have seen some sort of activity
True.
at the Capitol
You
that day.
would.
Some sort of either explosive or terroristic activity at the Capitol building that day, and you didn't see it. You saw it at Building 7, where Building 7 was
Was controlled
demolished,
demolition.
exactly, or brought down by, and the official story is that the flames brought that building down. Then when people say, well, high rise
Jet
never
fuel
came
cannot.
down,
Well,
exactly.
they did all the science.
Exactly.
The
High-rise
jet
jet
fuel
fuel
can't
down.
burn hot enough
Well,
to
it's not
melt
about
that
the jet
steel.
fuel. Exactly, but they're trying to say that Building 7 came down because of the fires that were started from all the debris that got flown into it.
It
and
could have been
damaged
from the
building.
thermite that was already
But it's
placed
still,
within the building.
that
before
building
that
would not
morning.
have come down that way. They still try and deny to this day that they demolished that building. They try and say
But
that
even though
building
they've
came down
admitted
because
it,
of it.
they've publicly admitted it. They can't
Exactly.
deny it now.
Well, they publicly admit it, but there's a lot of things they publicly admit in documents that they won't
Very
admit
true.
in interviews. You know, because
No, I
they
mean,
know
in interviews on like CNN, if this was on years ago.
they admitted that they
They
demolished the
showed
building.
the interview with the guy,
I know about the interview with the guy, but I've also seen probably 3 or 4.
and you can hear the audio
Other-
on the headset when he's saying, "Okay, we're gonna pull it. Ready? Pull it."
I've
2
heard
seconds
3 or
later,
4
building
other
drops.
people trying to debunk that and trying to say that that was firefighters saying that, and the firefighters, one, wouldn't have been the ones who would have been demolishing the buildings,
don't have the
and
authority.
2, they're saying, I've heard, and this is just people's debunking, I'm not saying that these people are correct, I'm not saying that they actually did demolish the building, I think that's the type of thing that 50, 60 years down the line, we're actually
We
gonna know
might
the
find
truth.
out what was in
But
that building.
I've heard people say that when you hear them say, okay, pull it, that they're saying it's their way, and since it's such a hectic, quick day, not quick day, but such a hectic day, that you're not fully spelling, okay, we need to pull every single guy out of this building. They're saying they had already talked on the radio before, do we need to pull our teams out? We got 3 teams in, what do we do with the teams? What are we gonna do with these teams? You don't hear the first 5 minutes before that.
True.
They could have been saying, hey, what do we do with our 3 teams in Building 7? It's still on fire, it's looking like it's seeming like it might collapse in here, or I'm hearing groans and stuff like that. I don't know if our guys should be in there. Okay, pull it. Alright, pull it. They could have just been saying pull it as in,
Pull
maybe
the
should have
plug
been
on the
saying,
operation,
exactly,
yeah.
should have been saying pull our guys out of there, but instead just said pull it in that rush of the day,
Yeah.
not thinking like I gotta say this correctly. He knows exactly what I mean by pull our guys out of there. It definitely is a demolition term, but it could also be the other thing, and I don't think we're really gonna fully know the truth for at least another 50 or 60 years.
Before we get off topic, real quick, let me go back to this Shanksville plane you say may have been intended for Building 7.
Mhm.
I've heard a lot of people get behind, it's pretty popular theory around internet conspiracy websites, things like that. Most people think that that was the plane that was supposed to hit the Pentagon, that when NORAD was ordered to stand down for the 2 planes that hit the towers, something got crisscrossed, whatever happened, miscommunication, somehow that plane in PA, supposedly, is just theory, was intercepted by 2 F-15s, shot down, because the wreckage is consistent with an airliner being shot down by a missile, not a plane crash. And that's why the images from the Pentagon don't show a jetliner, rather what appears to be an F-22 interceptor launching a Hellfire missile. Because that plane was shot down and was supposed to hit the, oh, now we gotta do something, we already have the plans in action, alright, dispatch an F-22, job done.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of documentaries that, not plenty, but I've seen at least 3 or 4 different documentaries that say the exact same thing, and they have witnesses that saw the F-22s or whatever flying directly overhead of them, and then not, from what sounded like to them, could have been 5 miles, but from what sounded like 3 or 4 miles down the road, they heard an explosion. And these planes, these F-22s, just flew directly over top of them. It's not extremely obvious, but it's kind of obvious what happened when those people are saying it. And those people have no, they have no vested interest as to lie for any good reason.
Even
they're just going to say what they saw.
The camera images that the Pentagon themselves released do not show what looks like a jetliner.
Well, there's also a lot to be said, and from my experience, and after this we definitely got to get off.
Yes, we do.
Is from my experience, and somebody I know was working at the Pentagon in that time range in the month of September in 2001, and was given that day off, was doing construction in that actual part that was hit, which there was barely anybody there that day. They had given them the day off for some reason. He was given the day off, but in his hotel, you could see the Pentagon from his hotel. 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes, he said. He's not joking, he's not saying, oh, maybe it was 5 minutes, felt like 2 minutes. No, literally 2 minutes after the explosion at the Pentagon. He heard the explosion, looked out his window. Literally 2 minutes later, there were federal agent cars at his hotel there to confiscate the camera equipment, all the cameras, the camera system, or the camera tapes that they had that were pointing at the Pentagon that day. Every hotel that was around the Pentagon, all of their tapes within minutes, not within a half an hour or 45 minutes, within literally 2 or 3 minutes, they were all, every single one of those hotels that had cameras, any business that had cameras that pointed at the Pentagon, all those cameras or all those camera systems were taken.
If that were the case, that theory I just mentioned, then you wouldn't want video getting out there of an F-22. That would blow up your whole story.
All right, now, even though it only took us 20 minutes to get back to it. Excuse me.
Oh, good guy.
All right, then.
You good over there?
Yeah, I'm good. What I would like you to do, I'm going to run over and grab my apple juice in a second, but I would like you to also tell us a little bit more about other things that you're interested, other things that you may be bringing up on the show, something that people need to know that you're bringing to the show each week. We know you're going to cover current events for us. You're going to cover the hot topics in the news for us each week. But what else are you going to bring to the show? What else are you bringing to the table? Can you tell us?
Little things in the past that I've uncovered that just food for thought. Topics like Gulf of Tonkin, Northwoods, Kennedy, anything along those ranges, anything that has questions that should be answered.
Okay.
Anything that could potentially pose a long-term threat to the safety and sanctity of our great nation, which we have the freedom currently to even make this show. There's things in the works that could possibly derail that down the road, and those are the kind of things that affect every American, whether they realize it or not, and I feel they should know about these things. And I can also give them an alternate perspective on esoteric type subjects due to certain affiliations I have on my nights off.
Okay. What about work-wise, I don't want to know what you do for work now. I want to know what kind of work experiences you have brought to the table, or what kind of, I don't want to say you have brought to the table, pardon my vernacular here, but I want to know what kind of work fields that you have worked in, and what kind of like businesses have you worked for or in that you could give a different perspective, because there's many times, many things that come up where your perspective of working in a certain field is definitely bringing a lot more to the table than either me or Rich. You know, and I'm gonna keep in mind. I'm gonna ask Rich the exact same questions.
Well, my first few jobs were like supermarkets, like ShopRite, things like that. And it was mostly production and manufacturing, warehousing, things of that nature, shipping, receiving, production at a chemical plant, things like that.
Cool. So you got like kind of a blue collar background.
Very much so.
You haven't ever really like worked in an office or anything like that. Never had
I couldn't see
a
myself
job with a
doing
phone to your ear all day.
I just
like
really couldn't see myself doing that.
Cool.
I thought about it once. It was like a telemarketing thing to sell home alarm systems.
Yep.
And when I realized that A, we're ripping these people off,
Uh-huh.
B, I only get paid if I sell X many alarms per week or whatever, and C, the company who manufactured them is actually a toy company, like, nah, this ain't working.
Okay, all right. I was going to say I had the same exact job because I can't be Sloan and Shield.
Nah, what was it? Security Watch or something like that.
Security Watch.
They're owned by Tyco.
Yes, I know all about Tyco, and which I was going to put up a little star for what do you call it to that I could put up the same star when I'm talking about it in my little segment is I did almost the exact same thing but for Sloan and Shield telemarketing and everything. But then down the road in life I had a job working in the security field. So I know about Tyco. I know about Tyco is actually not the parent company. The parent company of Tyco is Honeywell. The parent company of Honeywell is GE.
Oh, now we're getting somewhere.
Exactly. So GE
we're getting
actually,
very elite, if
well,
you will.
it helps you to really understand, and it's helped me to understand the corporate structure of the whole world, and literally the whole world. It's not just this country, it's the whole world.
6 corporations own
Exactly.
everything.
Yeah, exactly. How back in the day, like there's a perfect example. I was pouring some, some drain clear or whatever, drain clog clear.
Drano.
Yeah, exactly. It was liquid plumber. I was
Okay.
pouring some liquid plumber down the drain the other day, and I remember looking at the bottle and I just see a Clorox label on there, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure about 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago, Liquid Plumber was its own company. Liquid Plumber might have been owned by another company that had other like plumbing type of things, but Liquid Plumber wasn't owned by Clorox. I bet you it wasn't. Liquid Plumber was its own company. These major conglomerate companies, which Clorox is probably part of, like Procter and Gamble or some shit like
Wouldn't
that.
surprise me in the least.
Something like that. Exactly.
Pfizer.
They're all owned by major. There's probably, you say six companies own everything or own every company. I would say maybe 10 companies own, maybe not 10, 20 companies own 98 to 99% of all businesses out there. All right?
You do realize, have you ever noticed Bayer, who make aspirin? How many different things have you seen their logo on? I've seen it on pesticides, drain cleaners, heavy-duty soaps. Wait, you're telling me the same company that's making medication for me is making shit to kill insects?
Wannabe Monsanto. That's a wannabe Monsanto.
It's Monsanto. For all I
Baby
know,
Monsanto.
For all I know, Monsanto could own Bayer.
They're in bed together at least, that's for sure. All right, we got to take a break. We are back. What do you call it? So, kind of like Monsanto, blubbity bloobity blubbity blah. I was going to get into my description of myself, but we're on a little bit of limited time. I think our show's probably going to be around 45 to 50 minutes today, only because of our time constraints, and we had a little interruption in between, but unfortunately it was a necessary interruption. So We may be on a shorter show, so I believe maybe next week, me and Rich will do our introductions. You gave a great introduction. I was very happy with it, very impressed.
Well, thank you, sir.
It was half decent, if you ask me. Let's touch on a couple other things. I know you wanted to touch on Ebola. We'll only get into that for a couple minutes because I definitely want to bring Rich into the Ebola conversation. I really hope Rich can bring a different perspective to the Ebola conversation, just because Rich has a very strong interest in life after death and the other world, I guess you could say. I don't know if you would call it the other world, other dimensions and such things like that.
I'm looking at a different approach to the Ebola situation from the perspective that I started with 9/11, so I'm looking at other possibilities surrounding the whole picture, the whole global scheme, if you will. How many presidents, politicians, wealthy bankers, investment brokers have threw around the term New World Order since the late 80s. I have a lot on Ebola. I think a lot more is going to come out over the next week. I'd like to really get Rich's input on this.
Well, before you start delving into what you want to say on Ebola, I have two little points that I want to bring up about Ebola. The one thing that interests me is how rapidly it's spreading. So what is the timeline? I'd like to know. Maybe over the next week we can try and think. All of us can think about this, even you, Rich. The timeline, 6 months to a year to 5 years? What is the timeline?
Well, I know in about 4 days, the first 2 cases were reported in Texas. The one patient is in critical condition in Dallas. That's patient 0. There was a suspected case at a prison in Cobb County, Georgia, and a suspected case in an apartment complex in Oklahoma. And just this morning, CDC Hazmat had to remove airline passengers and quarantine them at Newark Airport for a suspected Ebola patient.
Yeah, and it's not Newark, it's Newark.
Newark.
Or Newark, as you would say.
Newark, for the benefit of non-Jerseyans who don't know.
Well, what you got to remember is there's some non-Jerseyans just slightly below us, just licking our balls there. Delaware, they have a Newark, Delaware that they call Newark.
Yes, we are referring to Newark, New Jersey.
When you come from New Jersey, you say no, you pronounce that Newark, and you're told very many times if you've ever been to Delaware or Newark, Delaware, and you say, hey, I'm in Newark, Delaware, they say, no, sorry, you're in Newark, Delaware. You're not in Newark, Delaware. You're in Newark, Delaware.
Yes, there is a difference.
But my question was the timeline. What is the timeline before this gets out of control? Because there's no known cure for Ebola. I know there's known treatments for Ebola, but there's no known cure for Ebola. So when does this get out of control to the point where everybody knows somebody that's affected?
That's something we have to look into this week.
Is that a year away? Is that 6 months away? Or is that 5 years away? How quickly is it going to spread to where everybody knows somebody affected and everybody has to start taking precautions? How quickly does America get to the point where you've seen so many cities in China only because of their pollution, but also they want to be, they feel it keeps them from getting germs from other people? How quickly are we going to get to the point where you see everybody walking around the streets, especially in major cities like Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C.? You see everybody wearing the dust masks to keep the germs and to keep from getting anybody who's coughing up Ebola putting it into the air. You're not walking through their cough stream and accidentally inhaling some of their Ebola. So when do we get to that point?
I don't know at this point. I have to look into that, but a lot of the charts that I've seen online are saying by 2015, early 2015. I'm going to do some more research into that.
Yeah, well, 2015 is 2 months away. Keep that in mind.
All I'm going to throw out there today, because I do want to wait for Rich to get his input. He had some stuff on Ebola too, so I'm just going to say October 26, 2009, the U.S. federal government filed a claim at the U.S. Patent Office that was published October 4th, 2012, U.S. patent number US 20120251502, human Ebola virus species and compositions and methods thereof. And I'll leave it at that.
Pretty cool. One thing that I wanted to touch on, you tend to find out that the U.S. government has a lot of interesting patents, to say the least. And,
Cure for AIDS was one of the ones that stood out to me.
I have a close relative of mine who is actually an employee of the U.S. Patent Office, but I can guarantee you that will never mean anything to this show. That will never mean anything to me as far as getting any kind of inside information to the patent office. That person will not give me any information on the patent office. So I'd like to say, hey, I got an in at the patent office. I don't. I know somebody who works at the patent office. I can give you conjecture. I can give you hearsay as to how things run at the patent office. I know almost any government job that you have, like the patent office, if you do your allotted quota of work and then go over, you're guaranteed a raise. It's not hey, you might get a raise next quarter or whatever. You're guaranteed a raise. And then if you do the same thing the next year or the next quarter, you're guaranteed a raise again. So the money structure and payment structure at the federal government is set up so that if you do what they say and you do things by the book, you're guaranteed to make more money. So the incentive to never stray and to never do something that you're not really supposed to do or do something the way that you want to do it, the incentive to do it the way you're supposed to do it or the way they tell you to do it is you're guaranteed to make more money. It's not like, hey, there's a possibility I might make more money. You're guaranteed to make more money. So it's pretty interesting. But the other thing I wanted to touch on Ebola was how so many people for a long time thought Ebola wasn't even around anymore, or thought Ebola was just something in like Africa and would never get here. There's no possibility. But if you want to look this up, I wish my computer was being a little more quicker today. We will be eventually using the desktop here as well. But one thing that people can look up is, I believe it was in 2010 or 2011, on a San Francisco bus, there was a test done by a university either in San Francisco or in California.
I think it was USC, I believe.
It might have been USC. There was a test done where they swabbed all the seats in the bus to see what kind of bacteria was being put on the bus and how dirty the bus really was, as far as everybody that's using the bus. What kind of bacteria and stuff were they coming into contact with? And on a San Francisco bus, on one seat, they found Black Plague. So you think Black Plague? Black Plague's from the Middle Ages. Well, Black Plague's not around. Black Plague has never gone away. Black Plague is still around to this day. And how easy, it really shows you how easy it is for something like Black Plague or something like Ebola, or even maybe a man-made disease like, well, I don't know, Lyme disease, which Lyme disease isn't as devastating as some of the man-made diseases that I know or believe have been created out there. But how easy is it for something like that to be spread among the populace? You know?
Yeah, so I just want to say to anybody,
quickly among the populace.
Anyone who's unfamiliar with the idea of Ebola or the spread of a pandemic, early 90s, a movie came out called Outbreak. Great movie. Dustin Hoffman, Morgan Freeman, Rene Russo.
Yeah, that little fucking scary monkey.
That was based on Ebola. That disease in that movie was Ebola, whatever they called it, Motaba. It was Ebola.
Yep, with that little scary
You
monkey.
want to know the timeline? You want a rough idea how this might possibly pan out? Watch Outbreak.
Yeah, or watch Kill Bill. There's a part of Kill Bill, even though I can't stand Kill Bill personally, there's a part of Kill Bill where the chick's bleeding out her eyes. She gets like slammed in the side of the head with some mace or something, and she starts bleeding out her eyes. Like, that's Ebola. If you want a good visual representation of what Ebola looks like, think of blood coming out the eyes, not like tears, like, oh,
out of the eyes, out
no, it's coming all out of the top of the eyes, bottom of the eyes. But then again, this isn't a horror show, so I'm not gonna delve too deep into that.
It is Halloween time.
Another thing that we want to touch on before we end up, or before we close out the show. Unfortunately, once again, I apologize that this is going to be a shortened show. Next week will be a full hour, and hopefully going forward, every week will be a full hour. But we might even have hour and a half shows at some point. We may have an hour and a half show here or there. But another thing I wanted to touch on, or I know you wanted to touch on, was Banned Book Week. It's Banned Book Week today.
It was a week and a half ago, actually.
Okay, it was a week and a half ago.
21st to 27th.
This is what Brian brought to me today. He came to me and he said, hey, look, it's Banned Book Week, or it was just Banned Book Week. I want to see all the banned books. And I'm actually thinking, first I said, who's Banned Book Week? Who's Banned Book Week? Because if it's the Banned Book Week by the National Library of Congress, I'm not interested in what they say is the banned book.
American Library Association Office for Intellectual Freedom, which promotes awareness of freedom of speech during Banned Books Week, which runs September 21st to 27th in the United States of America. And when I first heard of this, I'm thinking, okay, I know what's going to be on here. Jesse Ventura, 63
Exactly.
Documents. 1984 by George Orwell. Brave New World, Aldous Huxley.
Yep.
No, none of these are on the list. The list is...
Do you have, is Professor still around?
Real quick, going down, number 10, the series Bone by Jeff Smith. Banned for political views, racism, and violence. Number 9, Bless Me Ultima by Rudolfo Anaya. For occult Satanism, explicit language, religious views, and sexually explicit content. Number 8, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. For drugs, alcohol, smoking, homosexuality, sexually explicit material, and language. This is already not what I was thinking. As we go further up the list, it gets real interesting. Looking for Alaska by John Green. For drugs, alcohol, and sexuality. A Bad Boy Can Be a Good Girl. Number 6 by Tanya Lee Stone. Drugs, alcohol, smoking, nudity, language, sexually explicit material. Okay, you could maybe...
Nah, still no. For me,
Number
no.
5, this is what blew my mind and made me question this entire list and the people who put it together. The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Number 5, banned book of 2013. My first thoughts, okay, maybe because it could incite revolutionary action. No, this is banned for religious viewpoint and unsuitable for target age group.
Alright, now keep in mind, as soon
What?
as he told me Hunger Games, I said, throw the whole list out the friggin' window. That's the first book he saw on there was Hunger Games. I said, throw the whole damn list out the window.
Now,
It's
my question
BS.
though, now when I got into the reasons here, religious viewpoints, there are no religious
Don't-
viewpoints
you're-
in the Hunger
You're
Games.
barking up the wrong tree on that one. I'm not
Number
a Hunger
4,
Games fan.
50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. Nudity, language, religious viewpoints, and sexually explicit content.
These are books you don't want your 4-year-old to read.
Yeah.
That's what this sounds like. The banned
Number
books for your
3,
4-year-old.
number 3 banned book, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. For drugs, alcohol, smoking, language, racism, and sexually explicit material. You see, I call that book history.
Yeah, but I wonder if that has anything to do with the, it probably mentions absolutely nothing about the Indian farmers and their
It deals with
suicide
racism.
problem. But I guarantee it has nothing to do.
Okay.
If that were their
I
banned
see
book,
where you're going
it should
with
have
that.
something to do with Monsanto and the
Yeah, right.
Indian farmer suicides that
Number
Monsanto
2,
has caused.
number
That's what's going
2,
on.
this is a good one for you, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison for language, violence, sexually explicit material. And the one thing I noted on all 10 of these titles on this list, the one reason that is constant across all 10 titles, they all say they're unsuitable for their target age group. Which brings me to number 1. The series Captain Underpants by Dav Pilkey. This, here you go for viewers at home, if you can see this. This children's book is banned for language, violence, and is unsuitable for target age group.
Tell you what, man.
You can, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see at the bottom possibly the Scholastic Incorporated logo.
Yeah, they can't see that, but it's on there. It's on
Again,
there.
it's a banned book by the American Library Association. Absent from this list, titles like 1984, Behold a
think-
Pale Horse, Brave New World.
A good idea would be for next week, at least for me and you, if Rich would like to as well. I believe Rich may have some things, like maybe Heaven and Hell by Emanuel Swedenborg. We should all come up with our top 10 list. We each one of us has a top 10 list of our banned books, our top 10 banned books list. They don't have to actually be banned
Books that we
but they're
think
books
should have been on the list.
books that either should have been banned books or books that nobody knows about and needs
Alex Jones,
to know
9/11 Descent into Tyranny.
See,
That
I didn't
would
even
be
know
right- That would
Alex
be right
Jones,
on the list.
Never even knew Alex Jones ever even had a book. I thought he always had documentaries.
And then
and
he
other stuff.
did a book, and I think it was like 03, 04.
But another thing that I want to touch on for next week, and Rich, you need to be paying attention. You need to be listening because you need to come to the table ready to go next week. Considering I feel like if Rich was here, we would have touched on something else or maybe a different topic set. So on that note, next week, so that we have something to go off of and something that he can input on, so he
We
feels
will
like he has some input
definitely touch more on the Ebola situation.
But as far as not, remember what I said, this show is not always going
Yes.
to be always
But
current
I know
events
he
and not
wanted
all
to
current events. He
be
definitely
that
wants to touch
info
on
on
it.
that, so
What I'm talking
we'll
about
definitely
is
touch on that.
for next week. I already have an idea of what I'd like to use, but I have a couple of them, so I got to decide which one I'm going to use. But for you and for Rich, I want you guys to think about your most recurring dream that you've had in your entire life. Whether it be a nightmare, a fantasy, or just a regular old stupid dream, but you always have it for some reason. I'll give you an example. One of mine is, and this isn't the one I'm going to use, but one of mine is never able to find my car. The car I had in high school, a Ford Explorer. I have this dream where I'm walking around town trying to find out where I parked my car. And I can never, like, dude, where's my car? Is that all it is? Is it like just from dude, where's my car? I don't know. But that's something that I think we can all talk about.
Oh, yeah.
It has an esoteric and a definitely different vibe to it, and I think that's something Rich will definitely bring
Our
something
dreams
awesome to the
definitely
table.
have meanings, and I
Our
know
dreams
Rich
do
is
have meanings. That's what I'm
he's
saying.
more
We could all
in tune with
we could
those
all
things
always
than we
talk
are.
about that, or we could all always we can all debate and kind of brainstorm about what those dreams mean. But for next week, you need to bring one dream that is a constant in your life that you have over and over again. I need you to bring that dream and bring it. And if you want to write it down, that's fine. Since I go through the dreams so often, and I have a few of them like that.
Yeah,
I have a few that I can just rattle off right off the top of my head. Bring one to the table. Rich, you need to bring one to the table too. And I think that's going to be an awesome place for us to spend 15, 20 minutes on next week, really figuring out why we have these dreams for each one of us. I think it'll be an awesome place. So me and you, we focused a lot on current events today, and that's okay. But with him on the show going forward, we got to focus on current events and other stuff. So
Yes,
like
we
dream
do.
world and what happens after life after death. What is life after death? Me and Rich, that's something, and we're going to need you to think about that, because that's something in the next few weeks I can guarantee you, just knowing who me and Rich are, we're going to have that talk.
I'm
so
looking forward
think
to this
about,
conversation.
Exactly. Think about what you want to put into that as well. I'll let you finish up with a couple things, or with whatever you would like to finish up with. I would just like to let everybody know that every Sunday for the next maybe month or 2 months, we're going to go with, for the next, I was going to say 90 days, but that's 3 months. For the next month, at least for right now, we are going to be broadcasting at Sundays at 8 p.m. You can find us on the YouTube channel. We're going to have our own YouTube channel, the 3NN channel. I'm hoping it is called the 3NN channel. If it's not, it may be called 3 Non-Nerds if you're looking for it. But as of right now, if you look down below, you'll see that this is on the Nick Tesla channel and the Brian, is it just...
I think it's just Brian McFadden.
It's and the Brian McFadden channel. That's where you'll be able to find us, Sundays at 8 p.m. In about a month's time. I'm hoping that in either the first couple weeks of November or the middle of November that we can start going live, and that will be Sundays at noon. So I guess that's all, folks. I don't know. So what do you got? You got anything to wrap us up here, Brian?
I think we pretty much hit it all. It was pretty much slam today because of our time constraints. But we managed to touch pretty much all our topics.
Well, that's what you see. Time, and of course we did have a little interruption in between, but time is of the essence when it comes to a show like this, because we're going to, and this show is always going to be kept to an hour or an hour and a half at the most.
One thought,
one
thought I will put in people's heads, with everything happening right now, going around the world, everything going on, are we entering a new age? Like an actual new age in this existence? We've had the golden age,
okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, are we going into...
Is this the beginning? Are we witnessing it?
Is
this our lifetime that this...
Well, I hear that song, the Imagine Dragons, is it? Imagine Dragons Radioactive, that song, and he says a few times in the song, welcome to the new age, welcome to the new age. And when I hear that, it resonates with me on a very different level than most songs or most lyrics ever do. It resonates with me on a much higher level. But I believe if we're going to be entering into a new age, it can either be an age of heaven or an age of hell. And as of right now, unfortunately, the direction that it's headed is an age of hell. And it may seem like, yeah, we have all the technological advances and this and that. What happens with the technological advances? How many kids are sitting inside playing Xbox today when they could be outside hanging out with friends and making real life connections? But they're making real life connections on Xbox while sitting on their rear end and eating potato chips and playing Call of Duty, shooting people up, preparing for what the Army wants them to do. You know, and
Which is a
also,
topic I will get into down the road in a couple
plenty
of
of
weeks.
stuff for us to get into on that. So, I don't know. If you want to find, I guess that'll wrap up the show or close to it. If you want to find me, I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook.com/Notus66, Notus 66, or just search for Nick Tesla. I'm pretty findable on there. If you want to find Brian, he's on Facebook.com/
I don't know.
Some
Some weird address. Find me
just-
through Nick Tesla.
Yeah, there you go. Look at Nick Tesla's friends, and he'll be right up on there. Or you can also search for within the next 24 hours. I would have to say 24 to 48 hours. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up and have them looking 25 hours from now, like where's it at? But within the next 24 to 48 hours, we will have a Facebook page up, and within the next week we'll have a Google Plus page up, and within the next month we'll have a website up. So if you want to find us on our Facebook page, just search for 3NN, and I guarantee you you'll find us. All right, and on that note, it's been a wonderful show. I thank you very much, sir. This has been a great number one, and next week is number two, and so on and so on, and I think this show is going to be amazing. Keep in mind, this is our blank template.
Nowhere to go but up.
So, we're looking forward to having some sort of fan, some sort of a following. It doesn't have to be much.
Tell your friends.
Tell your
Every
friends,
Sunday
tell
at 8,
anybody you
we'll
can.
be on YouTube. Tell everybody. Show your friends. Show your family. You never know. Something said on this show might connect with someone you never thought about it until you show it to them.
Also, look for the Facebook page. We'll have an email address within the next week or so. Probably next week by this time we'll have an email address that you can email stuff to. But for right now, if you want to go onto the 3NN Facebook page, you can go onto the 3NN Facebook page. Remember, it might not be up for the next 24 to 48 hours. But once it is up, if you'd like to come onto the page, we'll always have the videos posted on the page. But you can also send a message to the page or leave a comment or a message on the page of suggestions. So anything that you would like us to talk about, any sort of a decoration that you think would look good or interesting behind us, anything, any equipment that you think would really help our production. The production is always going to be evolving into something better. But if there's any help that we can get from anybody else or any pointers, that would be a great thing. Nobody's perfect, you know. That is the beauty of humanity, is that we can all communicate with each other and make things better. So,
By the time this show is on the air, I should have a Hotmail account set up. Brian3NN at Hotmail.
I thought he was going to say a Hotmail nurse or something. I was about to say, Brian, I don't
No.
want to know about all that. A Hotmail
No,
account,
sorry,
a 3NN
not my
Hotmail
style.
account. Sounds good. We'll also have a...
So if anyone wants to send anything, any
it'll be a...
topics,
Yeah,
anything they
make
want
sure
us
you
to
make
talk,
it a,
something you want us to talk about, anything you think we should know,
Exactly.
to send
Suggestions,
it.
comments, suggestions, send them on out. And that email address, any email addresses we have...
And I'm
will be
99%
listed.
sure that's probably not taken, so I'm just going
What?
to go with Brian3NN at Hotmail.
There you
It's
go.
probably not taken, so
There you go. And now
it'll be
also
set
keep
up
in
by
mind,
tonight.
if you have anything current event related or even conspiracy related, or that you believe may be conspiracy related or may be tied to a conspiracy,
send it. I'll
feel
look
free
into
to
it.
send that to Brian.
I will look
You
into
can
it.
also send that to me. I'll look into it a little bit, but that's not what I focus primarily on. If you have anything that's like new age or esoteric like that, you can send that my way. You can send that Rich's way. As the show goes on, you'll realize what each one of our specialties are, and you'll know what to send us. If you have something that you want to send to the show, you'll know which one to send it to, or you can send it to the general show.
And we don't care
email.
how crazy or off the wall you think your question,
Yes.
or thought, or idea is, we will look into it.
Nothing too crazy. So, on that note, everybody have a great week. We'll see you Sunday,
At 8 o'clock.
next Sunday at 8 o'clock. And thank you for joining us. And we look forward to many more great, wonderful shows.
Have a good week.
Have a great week. Ah! Yeah.
Cue outro
No,
music.
no, you gotta be like your... I'm like, ready? I'm like Moses, was it Moses with my 10 commandments?